I've been talking about neuroscience, breath work, mindfulness, all the things to bring a more cohesiveness into our presence, into our lives. And here, my next guest for my podcast just brings all those pieces together, puts them nice and neat in the puzzle as he talks about neuroscience of manifestation. And his name is Marc Wendt. And I'm so excited and just really appreciate his fresh approach. So that way you can learn different ways, different approaches to bring more back to you, right? Because we're so scattered and we have all these things that we're thinking about and the pressures of our lives. We take life very seriously because there are some serious things happening. Although, when we can just relax a little bit and key into these puzzle pieces that he talks about, then our lives can be a little bit more free. We can enjoy life, be joyful in life. And then that's what creates the ripple effect. So come join us, be part of the ripple effect, tip your toe in the waters here with Marc Wendt. You will not regret it. See you there.
What inspired me to invite you on the podcast was when we left the discussion last, when we talked, you were talking about neuroscience. You said, "Oh, I have this
Yeah,
approach
this thing
or
called the
something."
neuroscience of manifestation.
Yes. So this is what I would love to talk about today. So let's just get started. Let's just get into it. I love this connection and how we're able to just seamlessly connect with you today here, Marc. And
Fabulous.
yeah, I met you through LinkedIn, and it was Isabel who had you on her uh, little meet and greet. And as I heard her talking with you and you sharing not just about coaching, but it was way beyond that. And I thought to myself, I need to know Marc, just the mindfulness approach, all the awesome tools and techniques and things that you have that you've worked with, right, in your own life, and then you apply it towards working with others. I just felt like you would be an amazing fit here. And I know that our audience and viewers would just really enjoy hearing more about you. So for those who aren't familiar with you, I know you have a really cool, interesting story, but just in the nutshell approach of that, um, who is Marc, and how are you, co-creating community with others?
Thank you for that question. Mm.
Mhm.
I am the son of two very progressive people, one who was a Buddhist and one who later became a Catholic, who became um, enthralled with the countercultural movement in the early 70s. And so I was raised in the possibility that what we might call the Aquarian age, the ideals for men that are emotionally intelligent, but also supple and strong, and whose core value is peace and, world unity. And throughout my life, I've had the blessings of lots of different generous teachers, and I've pursued a lot of training for myself um, to bring that about as close as I can to my own life experience. And then I went through a big transition in 2015 in my life, which was the career that I'd had and the marriage that I'd had dissolved and became something unavailable. It changed. And out of that moment, I got curious about how I had co-created the result with my partner. And that led me into what we might just commonly call men's work.
Mhm.
And while I was doing men's work in groups with other men who were developing themselves, I began to ask deeper questions. And one of the teachers at one point took me aside and said, "Hey, the insights you're having speak to me of the possibility of you being able to take on a leadership or a coaching role yourself." And I immediately recognized that because there's a deep desire for me to know people and to be revealed, and but also to have them reveal themselves. And so I began to train. I've had a bunch of different coaching certification processes. I've also been part of something called the Remember Institute, which is run by BIPOC people, and it's devoted to the possibility that people who are of European descent could come to terms with the colonizer mindset and the institutional racism that's in our culture, and the indigenous history that has been shrouded by what we might call normal Western history.
Mm.
As a result, my progressive and views in the world have taken on even more clarity. And so I sit in this moment with the dedication to service of the possibility that through coaching and through just showing up in my best way, with humility, but also vibrance and capacity and a willingness to be seen, would somehow be of service to all of us in this quest to have a healthy, peaceful coexistence together.
Yeah. Isn't that what we all want? That's what I believe what we're all seeking. Uh, and it's wonderful to have a presence, a person such as yourself to help guide men, right? You said men's group, so mostly, men coaching. Um, Although that is the ripple effect, right? As you're working with individuals and groups, and then they discover more about themselves, right? That's that building that relationship with ourselves, and then they take that and it's that ripple effect through their home, through their professional life, into the community. It's just amazing, powerful yet subtle work that you're doing.
Yeah. And it's really gratifying to live at this focal point because
Mhm.
purpose is something that drives men. Men are really interested in purpose. Women too. Like it should be said that when we start to use these gender binaries, that it's really helpful to just think of people as people. And it's interesting because about 20% of my clients are women. So it's not exclusive and it's not narrowed down. It's the idea of if you come to a moment of awareness that you want something more from your life, what's the path to getting there? And my basic premise is that everyone already is who they need to be at a deep level. And my job as a coach is really to remind them about what they've forgotten about themselves that can be so
Sure.
powerful and really allow them to bring out their best individual nature, which is what we
Hmm.
all need. We all have something really powerful to offer the communities we belong to. And so the idea is to set you free from the cultural conditioning and the limiting beliefs and whatever other programming that has you shrouded in the belief that you're not valuable or that you can't do it or that it isn't worth trying or anything, courageous, basically.
Yeah, and it does take courage and commitment to show up for ourselves and step into that space of that uncertainty, even though we know we want more for ourselves. Having you or other around as a support, like creating that sanctuary, so that way they can be vulnerable, ask questions, and this is how growth, right, begins. Mhm.
Yeah. One
Yeah.
of the things I noticed about my own life is I became somewhat of a transformation addict. Like there was this, once I started to gain momentum and I realized that what I'm capable of, the amount of momentum that went into currently and consistently just developing myself and my practices, it's such a joy. Like it no longer becomes this heavy, like transformative, like confronting thing. There's a moment at which it's like, oh my God, it feels so good to shed this skin and become the new self today. And the morning practices that I have and the way that I treat my body feel like that. Like every day is a new day, and energetically shedding the past with each moment, with each day, the end of the day and beginning anew.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's so needed for us to give back to ourselves. And as you said, that pressure, I think a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to be a certain way, to perform a certain way. And when you realize that it's really not that serious, life is not that
Um,
serious, and we can explore and bring in that power of playfulness and curiosity, as you said in the beginning. You became curious. I think that's what helps, shift that the stuff. Uh,
there are
yeah.
definitely moments where it feels super serious and life threatening, and then we're in our stuff, right? And so meeting people there and being with them in that state and that energy frequency, and then showing them how they can move their own vibrations, their own thought patterns, their own way of being into another possibility, and then reminding them that they can do it consistently, that every time they find themselves in a place that they can shift. And that all comes from the lineage of my teachers. So it's something we're all sharing with each other. It's not like something I possess, although my unique flavor is unique and all of that. But it's also, I don't have to carry around this idea of being an authority or being, the smartest one in the room or anything like that. I just get
Mhm.
to be at where we all are, which is at the apex of the intersection of, creating a new possibility for ourselves. And
Mhm.
joy is a big part of that, because joy is a much higher frequency than fear. And courage and joy, when you combine them, you can just break open the realm of possibilities into an open space where creativity can flourish, and things that we want to build. And, a masculine building energy is a really potent thing. So helping people build the vision and then execute the vision is just, it's really gratifying. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, the inspiration of that growth and being aware of the shift when it's happening. I mean, that is what we're here for, is to savor those moments. And this is all part of, I've said in the past, it's the stone soup of collective consciousness that we're all contributing to. So you said you have your own flavor. So what would your flavor be? What is that for you, Marc?
Mm, yeah. It's pretty broad. And in terms of client relationships, I like to work one-on-one. And so I meet people where they are. But
Mm.
generally, myself, when I'm very heart-centered, very empathetic, and also very forthright in my desire to actually make something happen, to create action. So that's a combination of warmth and holding space, and then also challenging people to move off of their discomfort, or off of their comfort, really, into their discomfort. Encouragement, challenge, love, vision. I seem to be able to help people describe what it is they're seeing with
Mhm.
words that they might not actually have access to themselves. Um, there's all sorts of different vectors of technique, right? One of the most powerful things that we've come across, I think, collectively, is the awareness that we create our own reality. And the way we create that is through how we think about things. The axiom I'm really fond of is, what you think about, you bring about, and what you feel becomes real. And there's so many books that have been written on this subject, and there's so many people doing amazing research on this. People who've looked into Joe Dispenza's work can really relate to this. And it's goes way back, even to the sages of the turn of the 20th century, who had the fledgling occult magazines and books that were in the United States. And, there's some great business books out there that are all about the power of positive thinking and all of those things. But it ties back, I think, more to the emotional body than to the mind. And that's where people forget sometimes, because we want to think of the power of mind over matter, but
Yeah.
it can often become a panacea or something for people who are thinking all they have to do is think about it while they sit on the couch. That isn't going to work. And the other side of it, the emotional side of it, is when you bring passion, or you bring the ability to actually touch the emotional part of yourself and shift that,
Mhm.
right? Say maybe you're feeling sad, or you're feeling down, or you're feeling a low vibration kind of experience. What can you do to shift that? What actions can you take to shift that? And then that becomes a really powerful way to cause new things to occur. And so the neuroscience of manifestation is, how do we use the mind and the body to bring ourselves into alignment with our highest self, the highest vision that we have for what we want to create in the world. And then part of that is discernment. How do we know what not to involve ourselves in? What do we hold back or limit or allow to
Mhm.
pass away? I'm going to tell a little story. I had the great fortune of getting to spend an evening with Carlos Santana in his music home studio. A DJ, a friend of his, had brought me there, and I sat quietly while they talked. I'd always been a big Carlos fan. And finally, he turned to me. He's like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm Marc." And I love music. And at that time, I was a very young man, and I play music. And I said, he says, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Oh, I want to play music. I want to, see the world." And he says, "Oh, be careful what you wish for." And he told me this story. And the story was about how this man under a tree was visited by a genie. And the genie said, "Anything you think of, you can have." And the guy goes, "Really?" And he thought, "I want millions of dollars in gold." And poof, it appeared in front of him. And he says, "Oh, I want a beautiful woman who adores me." And poof, she was there, and touching him and giving him love. And he's like, "This is amazing. If I think of anything, oh my God, what if I think of a tiger?" And poof, a tiger came and ate him. And so the story that Carlos told me was really a reinforcement of this idea that, we really do create the possibilities. And so we have to guard
Mhm.
ourselves and direct our thinking in a focused, intentional way. And so most people aren't creating the cause in the cause and effect relationship they have with their life in an intentional way that's fueled by a vision that has consistency to it. So the first part is to recognize the neurology of who we are. And there's some great work. There's a neuroscientist in Britain named Anil Seth. And Anil Seth did a bunch of research. And one of the things he realized is that our powers of perception are predictive. In other words, we don't see it unless we create it from within. Our visual cortex recognizes something that we've already given life to inside us, and he's done this from a scientific perspective. There's a great TED talk if you want to look at it, and you're listening to this podcast. Just Anil Seth, Seth, Anil Seth, and he's a neuroscience scientist, and he talks about predictive perception. So what you cultivate in your mind's eye creates the ability of your senses to experience it in the world. And that's a super basic, rudimentary thing. And one of the things Anil does is he plays during this presentation a sound. It's really garbled sound, and no one understands what it means or what the words are. And it after he plays it a couple times like that, then he plays it slowed down so that you can hear the articulation of it. And then after he does that, and you hear the original sound again, now you can hear what's being said there. And so it's proof in the moment, it's proof to people that once the brain finds its point of
Mm.
origin, its ability to sort of be at the understanding of what it's experiencing, then it can interpret the data.
Mm.
So
That's
we
so
make me
fascinating, isn't it? I mean, it's so true once you think about it. Um,
Yeah, and so the next level in is the Joe Dispenza work where he talks about how by changing the brain waves and then lowering the down what we call it is theta. Like there's theta healers. Theta is very close to dreaming, right? And powerful meditation practitioners can get into almost a theta state or a theta state. And when you're in that state, you have access to a different way of being in relationship with your body and how you perceive the world. And so you want to tune your mind. And then also you want to become intimate with your emotional
mm,
reactivity, the emotions that happen in your body, because the emotional body and the mind have a relationship. So that you can think yourself into an emotional reaction. We've all had that thing where we were spinning ourselves out, like maybe it was a bad breakup and we just kept going over and over why it turned out the way it was. And the more we thought about it, the more we had the same recurring emotions, right? Vice versa, you can feel a certain sadness and a certain down, and it will tend to have your thinking become negative, right? And so you want to learn how to shift your emotional state and the thinking that goes with it so that you can color the world with a perceptive possibility, right?
mm,
Predictive perception. The brain perceives the world through the lens that it creates for itself. And so it's true of the emotional body as well. And so the idea behind the neuroscience of manifestation is when you practice emotional intelligence, which is really just knowing your feelings
mhm,
and knowing the thoughts that get generated from those feelings, and then learning how to use your breath to moderate those and to tune those to a frequency that is generative, creative,
mm,
being part of the world's evolution and creative expansion, as opposed to dismissive or discursive and
mm,
negative, the decay, right? There's these natural forces in the universe, growth and decay, and they're all happening simultaneously everywhere around us. The breath in, the breath out. The mushroom grows, it falls apart, right? These are the forces of nature. And so when you realize that your state of being, one, isn't fixed, and B, you have the will to shift it, now you just need to know, well, what are the techniques? Well, how do I do that?
mm,
And that's part of what I coach, right? Is how does meditation and qigong and affirmations and these things attune the mind, and then how does emotional intelligence tune the emotional body so that those things are all humming together like a song,
mm. Oh,
right?
that's so good. So good, Mark. I mean, all the things that you touched upon, you just put all the pieces together of the puzzle of what I've been talking about on this podcast for so long. I absolutely love this. And I hope my listeners are laughing along with me because it is so true. Because I talk about movement, I talk about breath, I talk about neuroscience and, just being aware of our thoughts and how the body responds. And yet here you show up today and it's like, oh, yes, it's the neuroscience of manifestation. Ah! That's all I'm going to say. And it's lovely and wonderful. I'm very appreciative that you unpack that for us, and it's just so important for all of us to remember. We're not fixed. We're not just because we chose a career, just because we went to school. And I think that's the mind, right? It tries to validate. You spend all this money, you've dedicated all this time and energy into this career, what have you. You have to stay here. You have a 401k and you've invested in it and but yet you're still unhappy. So part of like our hearts are saying, I want more. There's more for me. I know I can feel it. And then the mind comes in as protection. It's not good or bad. Just saying, look, this is what you've invested in and what you have to do, but it's not true. We still have that choice. And I love how you bring in movement, right? Just moving the body first. Let's get that crusty, let's break out of that armor, yeah, that stagnation that we've held in our bodies, because our bodies are amazing containers and they hold everything for us. So I believe once we know that we are our own divine creators, because we are connected to all, and all is me, um, that it's easier to find a way to flow and to relax and breathe in the moment and trust in ourselves and in the process that unfolds for us as we are carving out those new neural pathways in our brains and
Mm.
in our perceptions.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit more about it.
Please.
When you get to the place where you can observe yourself
Mm.
through your practices, you can see the thinking, you can notice the feeling. This observer self has the potency to then shift through practice, through some sort of action taking. And sometimes the simplest things are super powerful. So, for instance, when you hum a happy tune, you're changing the vibration in the body. You're changing the emotional body, you're changing the thought process. And then when you extrapolate this idea and we look at organized religions and how the singing in church, right? And then the Buddhists who are chanting,
Mm.
right? Or the Hindus who are chanting, right? When the voice is employed with the intention of changing the experience, it literally physically revibrates the way you're vibrating in your body. And one of the evidence we have for this is people love to go see music and see concerts, and they have a unified experience at these things. And then they connect with the story that's being told by the storyteller in the song, and it's very affirming
Mhm.
of life. Even like a bad country drinking song has a quality to it that someone is resonating with because they're in pain and they feel guilt and they feel sadness, and so that frequency is a match for someone who's in that state, right? It isn't necessarily something I want to stay there with. Like a lot of people end up cultivating their suffering
Mhm.
because they can feel a group identity with it, or they can feel safe because it's a known feeling, right? Same for men with anger. Anger is valid for men. Men are allowed to be angry. We don't often like it, but one of the things that most of the men I work with find is when you ask them, well, what's your emotional state? Frustration and anger are often the first. Sometimes happy, but sadness, jealousy, fear, those things are harder for men to admit to, right? So when you are with a musician that's inspiring, that's uplifting, where you're in church and you're singing hymns, or you're chanting and meditating at home, you are changing the vibration in your body in a physical way. And when you do that consistently and as a practice over time, it has an effect on your environment. And that
Mhm.
in turn has an effect on other people, and new opportunities are born out of that, right? We are, it's the law of attraction, but it's not passive, it's
Mhm.
active. And that's
Mhm.
a really important piece, right? Because when you actually resonating, right, you're
Mhm.
changing the environment with the way that you're being. And that's a choice to change the environment, to change your state of being. And so it's interesting because you can get down to this level with people and really start to talk on what's essentially an esoteric practice we're talking about right now, or an exoteric, depending on how you see it. But how do you go to a Fortune 500 executive and help them shift in their life? If you start at this level of woo, they might not be able to connect with it, right?
Mhm.
So the process of finding the point of entry with everyone is a big piece. We all have to start where we are, and there's no shame in not knowing where you are. And you don't have to become a yogi. You don't have to like become a master at breath work to make this stuff work for you. Sometimes it can be just as simple as going a couple
Yeah.
times a day at work and just letting it go, right? Or putting on your favorite music and humming along,
Mhm.
like with Lady Gaga, or, whomever who lifts your spirit, right? And allowing ourselves to access this doesn't have to be guru level 10
Mhm.
for everyone, right? So
Yeah.
there's so much in this, and it's really an entry point. And then language, what is the power of the word?
Mhm.
That's a really potent next step. Because again, it's the vibration, it's the voice, right? And the origin of the word abracadabra, you know that magic word, right? You've heard that word before.
Oh, yes.
So it's Arabic. Did you know that?
I think I heard it one other time, but say more.
So the word abracadabra means I create as I speak.
Ah,
And that's again an English translation from a person who looks like me. I mean, there's some deeper subtlety to it that I'm sure someone who is more of a wordsmith could tell me
I
about.
think
That's
I'm
the
gonna
basic thing.
implement abracadabra a lot.
So, how you frame your sentences matters. The way you speak to yourself internally and the way you speak to others is really powerful because you're creating in that moment. You're either creating connection, or you're creating emotional resonance, or even just pure intellectual information is still a creation. So the quality of the speech, whether you may not even be speaking, you're maybe just speaking to yourself internally, like, I never should have done that. I'm such an idiot. Like, don't do that to yourself, right? You could take that and go, ooh, I feel some pain and regret right now.
Mhm.
I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to shift my behavior the next time, right? That's a whole different mental framework. And so when you speak, you create. As I speak, I create. And
Mhm.
that's
And
we're all practicing magic at that fundamental level, right? And it's not black or white or dark or evil, or it's not against God. It's none of that. It's just we have this incredible innate creativity that's natural to us. It's our birthright by being in a human body. And so how do you gain the most benefit from that for yourself, for your community, for the environment, right? So being self-aware,
Mhm.
observing what we say to ourselves and others, and learning to tune our emotional bodies to feeling what we want to feel, even in the face of stress, even in the face of discomfort. And I love working at this point with people. I love witnessing the way that they unfold new possibilities for themselves, whether that's with their income or their work or their relationships, or even, creativity. Like, I had a client this year who is a musician and an influencer, and they were feeling very stuck, and I just was able to connect with them at a certain level and remind them how to unlock the parts of them that were speaking about their inability. The whole story that they were stuck wasn't true,
Yeah.
and that was part of why they were stuck, right? uh so one of the things it says on my LinkedIn profile is I'm a solutions generator. Now, why is it phrased that way? It's also could be referred to as a problem solver.
Mhm.
But first, you have
I'd
to
rather
generate
have
a problem.
solutions. I'd rather have solutions than focusing on the
See?
problem.
Exactly. And that's an
Yes.
example just of how we word things, how subtly wording things differently can really shift everything.
Mhm. Oh, I couldn't agree with you more, Mark. Just all the wonderful little nuggets of information and seeds that you're planting here, to germinate and grow. And I hope people re-listen to this, rewatch it, because there is so much to unpack here, to work with, even thinking about our language and our thoughts and what we're telling ourselves. There's a lot of science behind it too. I like to look at, of course, I'm about energy and about mindfulness and all of that. Although there are a lot of people that like to know the science will kind of show me how this works. So as you're talking about the movement, right, with the body, using qigong and the breath, well, that is just tapping into our parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest. That's where the body says, oh, yeah, this feels good. I remember now. I remember that I can breathe, that I can move, that I'm not fixed in this little cubicle or at a desk or something and just answering emails all day or on Zoom calls. I can move. This feels good, and it moves the fluids in your body. It detoxifies your body. Your breath does. So that's the science behind it. If people are kind of scratching their heads, maybe a little bit about that. And then also, again, I'm just bringing it back to what you said in the beginning, the curiosity. I wonder how this can help me. I wonder, just reaching out for a discovery call with Marc and really connecting with him on a one-on-one level. I wonder how that can help me ease that pressure a little and find a different way, a different approach. Because the old saying of insanity, repeating same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I think a lot of people kind of get stuck on that hamster wheel or in that box, and they're fumbling around for the light switch and they can't find it, and it's just right there. And it just takes somebody, such as you, Marc, with your amazing presence and awareness, to just shift it a little bit. Just let's look over here at this angle, instead of looking at head on. Let's step back, shift, change our perspective, and then we can find that switch. We can find the door, for more in our lives.
Yeah, what I'd love to say is be patient with yourself.
Mm.
It takes a lot of conditioning for us to get into these states. And when you think about how our nervous systems, our amygdala, our polyvagal system is getting hijacked by stimuli everywhere around us, give yourself a little grace because you're swimming in an environment that is clamoring for your attention. The reason there's bars on this device that I'm holding up is because
He's
it's a
holding up a
prison.
phone in case you're watching on the podcast.
Yeah. So let me say that again. There's bars on my cell phone because it's a prison. And so there's this
Oh.
idea here where we are being captured. And I don't want to put it in the malevolent they. It's just a pattern that it emerges because we're all clamoring for attention on some level, and commerce is fed by that to some degree. But
True.
you are welcome to get on an hour-long free call with me. Anyone that's hearing this, it's really easy. You just go to my website and you can do that. And you can walk away from this conversation and just dial down the amount of things that you let into your awareness. Turn off your phone for an hour a day. Start there. Like, take 3 deep breaths. One of my favorite things to do is take my noise canceling headphones and turn on the noise canceling function and not listen to anything.
Oh, that's fun.
Amazing,
Yeah.
right? So, yes, come call me. If you want to work with me, I'm happy to entertain that if it's in alignment. If you just want to spend an hour with someone who will give you exquisite attention. It's
Mm.
part of what I do. And if any of that feels like confronting or challenging for you, you can just walk away from this podcast and do some kind things for yourself. Just let your breath and your own capacity to renew and and to heal emerge from the stillness and the quiet of your own being. You were built for this, and I'm just here to remind you that that's who you really are.
Mm. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. And as I say, we're mirrors of each other. And what we witness within you that it attracts of, oh, I'm so curious about him and I really like his approach on this, that's just remembering something within ourselves. That we have that
Yes.
ability. It's just Mark has done amazing work and who he is and how he's showing up to where he's just opening the door and inviting. You're just inviting us in. So I really appreciate you, Mark. Thank you so much for your wonderful words, your language, uh, and the gentle reminders, to have that compassion for ourselves as we are continuing to work from the inside out. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. I feel the connection to you. I feel your nature in the way that you are being a cause and an effect in the world.
Mhm.
And so I'm grateful for our time together and the inspiration that your curiosity brings to me and to your audience. Um, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Uh, and thank you everyone for tuning in and listening or watching here. And again, please, I'm going to leave Mark's information in the description and you can reach out as he's invited so graciously for a discovery call and connect with him. And I'm curious what that will bring as we continue to, keep living our lives with intention. So until
I
next
am
time,
too.
oh, you are too. And I have a quick question before we leave. What is your practice, your daily practice to keep living with intention in your life, Mark? I think you alluded to a few things, but I'd like to hear more before we
Got it.
leave.
So, starting with, I turn my phone off at a certain time, an hour before I go to bed at least. Then when I wake up, I do very specific things. I get up and I drink some water, and I do a series of practices that include qigong, stretching, meditation, and then a cold plunge in my
Mm.
unheated pool. Thank you, God, for this unheated pool on this 100-degree day. And then I have my own exercise. Like, one of the things I create out of the neuroscience of manifestation is what I call the new neurological workout. And so I go through the enunciation of the powerful phrases that are connected to my emotional body and my intellect and my vision. And so that point I've tuned myself to the things that I'm in alignment with, and then I journal. And then I start to interact with people in various capacities, either on LinkedIn or client calls or whatever's going on for me.
Mm.
That's my daily practice.
Ah,
And I'll just be honest, like this week, there have been some very difficult things that have appeared in the field around all of us. We're all facing a lot of interesting challenges in our life as we look at the social sphere. And one of the things I needed to add to this week was to take a salt bath with some higher levels of magnesium and some other things. And I don't do that every day, but I noticed I needed it. I was like, oh, I've even with all this, I'm like, I need more. And that was really, really powerful. And then I exercise during the day. Um, and I have some dietary things. And that's where my struggle is, because I seek comfort in food. And so
yeah.
that's where my struggle is. I think it's really important for people to appear real about the fact that we all have stuff we're working on. And so I have all these practices and I have this high level of gift and awareness, but I'm just a human being working on my stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful that you are a human being so we can connect and have this collaboration with you before you do transcend to wherever next. So, oh, thank you, Marc. Thank you for sharing those ways that you connect back to yourself and being so humble to say, hey, even I need, a deeper detox or really put these simple yet effective practices, keep that going. Uh, and we're going to have days where we feel open and bright, joyful automatically, and then other times there'll be a shift, there'll be an undercurrent. And this is where that emotional intelligence and that awareness comes in, as you talked about previously. So yeah, we're all flowing and learning together.
Okay. As in the words
Okay.
of Bobby McFerrin, don't worry, be happy.
Yes. Yes, we are. So thank you so much for leaving us on the happy note. And I look forward to possibly co-creating with you in the near future.
Let's do some more. Yeah, whatever
Yeah,
that looks like.
I would love that. So keep living with intention, my friends. We'll see you next time. Be well.